Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. This is Matt Orozco here from Macabre Daily, and I'm excited today because I'm joined by J.M. Brandt, who is one of the publishers and minds behind the Horror Not Hate anthology, which will be coming up. Is in pre-launch currently on Kickstarter, hoping to launch officially in December. But J.M. has been part of the comic community for some years now, working on properties like Swamp Dogs, Swaller of Shades for Dark Sky Publishing, as well as the Holiday Spirits, Volume 3. We can see a little bit of holiday cheer and screaming in between. So, JM, thank you so much for spending some time to talk today about Horror Not Hate.
Of course. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's awesome. And I knew as soon as you had reached out about Horror Not Hate and kind of talked a little about what it is and why you're doing it, immediately it was kind of like kismet because it's using, horror, which is something we all kind of come together for as a means to fight back against a lot of the, let's just call it, fascism and awfulness that's going on in the US federal government right now. But before I get too much into, because I do want to talk about kind of the why and kind of what inspired you to start it. But before we go there, I would love to just learn a little bit more about you for folks that aren't familiar. How did you get your start in the comic book writing and publishing world?
Sure, yeah. I had been approached to write a movie treatment or a movie proposal for the producers of the Halloween franchise. It was one of those strange, I live in LA, I'm an LA native. And so it's like a friend of a friend of a friend is all of a sudden friends with the Halloween producers and they want, new blood and blah, blah, blah. And so they had me write a movie treatment. And I had this idea for modernizing and retooling a Spanish horror movie from the 70s called Tombs of the Blind Dead.
Holy shit, JM. I've got my Coffin DVD box still in my closet right here because
Yeah,
they
no,
haven't
it's
unleashed all of them on Blu-ray yet.
right. Yeah, no, it's true. And honestly, I haven't even seen all the sequels. I think right now I've seen one and two, and the remaining two are still to be watched. Um, Bad experience with part two, but the original is super unsung, underrated. Some of my favorite monsters in all of horrordom, and it occurred to me that there were a lot of analogs that I could run between Tombs of the Blind Dead and at the time we were sort of just post Hurricane Katrina. And
Mm.
so my thought was for those people listening or reading and who don't know, Tombs of the Blind Dead is about undead Templars from the Crusades that have come back due to devilry and black magic, and they're trying to sustain life by taking life, essentially. So some sort of perverted mix of vampires and zombies and liches and what have you. And so I thought to myself, well, in Louisiana, they had the Civil War. Confederate soldiers are very looked down on. I look down on them, at
Yeah.
least. Unfortunately, I'm
More people
some
should.
people. More people should, yes. More states should.
Yeah.
But so I was thinking, well, what if instead of Crusaders, they were Confederates? And what if instead of black magic from the Near East, it was voodoo? And all of a sudden, you kind of have it. And if you remember the movie, and for those that don't, one of the main characters in it is like a smuggler. And so it occurred to me that we could just have somebody that sort of runs a small town smuggling ring or thieving ring, where they're looting from New Orleans. And it kind of rolled. And when that fell through, the idea just couldn't escape me.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, thank you. It just like I was like, I need to make this. I need to make this somehow, right? And so I went through all the hoops. I contacted, it was really tough finding the rights holder for the movie, by the way. And they wanted some ungodly amount of money for it. And it was like, okay, is this the end of my dream? And I said, no, like there's still the bones of a good story. Not necessarily doing Tombs of the Blind Dead, but um the idea of black magic, voodoo, bringing back Confederate soldiers, and you have a lesbian love story, and all this other stuff. You add in some other characters, and that became sort of the foundation for Swamp Dogs. I brought on another writer. I was working for Screen Rant at the time, and found sort of a kindred spirit in another Screen Rant writer named Theo Prasidis, who had just released a book on through Image, which actually
All
is
right
not a
on.
comic. Yeah, it's not a comic. It's like the only non-comic Image has ever done, as far as I
Huh.
know. It's like a picture alphabet book based on doom metal and stoner metal. And so
Oh my God, I gotta grab that.
yeah, no, it's God, it's got some really, really long titles, so I don't even know what it is anymore. I used to have it memorized when I was doing press for Swamp Dogs, but so we started working on this and we started workshopping, and once we were free from trying to follow the story, note for note, it occurred to me like, hey, like let's make this our own. And so we added stoner metal band to the group, and sort of had like a dysfunctional Kevin Smith Scooby-Doo dynamic to it. And the undead, now that they didn't have to all be sightless, silent killers, we decided to infuse each one of them with personality and special powers and make all of them unique, sort of in a like a Cenobite kind of way. So I tell people it's like voodoo Cenobites if they're not familiar with liches.
You're speaking my language, Jam, because I've got the old Cenobites right here on my arm. So
Right
this
on.
is this like you're hitting all the boxes of things that would get me to just say take my money right now.
Right. Right. Well, my whole life, people were like, "Oh, you're so good with words. You should be a writer. You should be a writer." And at one point, it just sort of stuck, and I was like, "Yeah, I guess that's what I should do. Like, I enjoy doing it. People seem to enjoy me doing it, so let's go for it." And it occurred to me a long time ago that I would much rather write stuff that I would want to read myself as opposed to following the money.
Right.
And so everything I've done since then, everything I'll continue to do, uh, primarily at least, will be stuff that I would want to read as a horror fan.
Well, I mean, I'd already kind of can tell that one, you're one of us because of your reference of Tombs of the Blind Dead, and also just the ingenuity of taking that idea and realizing that, hey, we don't need to actually remake this so much as just take what works about it. And because that's you can't copyright the premise, right? But what you can is you can copyright a title. And so I think what you've done is you've demonstrated that one, remakes don't have to necessarily be kind of in title only, but also like maybe a clever way around some of this is to take, what is a good idea and just not try and make it like what it came, well, or at least pay your homages, but don't try and replicate it as it was. And you think about the films that maybe made you like, what are some of the horror films that really initiated your interest in genre?
Oh God. I sort of was unavoidably a horror fan from a early age. My grandmother was into them, my mother was into them.
Oh,
It was
that's so
a matter of
cool.
time. Yeah, it was only a matter of time before I got into them. It didn't help that I was a real skittish kid with a lot of nightmares as a kid. But my parents also weren't very good about media management and also understanding what was age appropriate for me. So I wound up watching some horror pretty early on and just being exposed to it. I would be in my bedroom trying to fall asleep, and you would hear screaming from the other room or something if they're watching a VHS. So yeah, formative for me. So my parents always used to call me the Thing growing up because my mom went into labor during John Carpenter's The Thing in the movie.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I sought that out from a really early age. Killer Clowns from Outer Space was randomly on because a cousin was watching it when I was real little, and sort of that was pretty formative. Seeing one of the first scary things on video be a mutant small clown punching a guy's head off. I was
Right.
like, oh, okay, like
Cocooning them in cotton
funny.
candy.
Right. It could be funny, it could be scary, and the two overlap, and there's places where they do. So those were pretty big. Evil Dead 2 is a huge one for me. From Dusk Till Dawn. is a huge one for me. I've seen that movie over 130 times because I'm a freak, and we had a black box growing up, so that made it easier. Um,
Those were
and
the days. For people that don't know, by the way, a black box was if you were lucky enough to have someone that you knew who either worked for the cable company or um, was just really good at understanding how those things work. They would set up these boxes to your cable box that would essentially allow you to get all of the channels um, without it would unblock whatever the cable company was doing to block their phone, which is reminds us how far we've come
yeah,
from then when you could just hijack your cable subscription to get free pay channels versus now where you need a password for every single streaming service to be able to get like all of the content you used to be able to get just through cable. It's
although my conspiracy theory is that people have figured out ways around all of this already, and I feel like maybe I'm just out of the loop. And also a little bit more conscientious about who we're taking from and how
right.
much and why and levels of risk. I've become kind of weak and docile and consumerist over the years, but I guess I guess if I knew about like ways to get around it, I wouldn't feel so bad taking money out of Warner Brothers' mouths and Amazon's mouth. But
Yeah,
you
I
know,
have no issues sharing a Netflix password or an Amazon password with anybody. But, when it comes to a filmmaker's screener link that they put all their own money into, like that'll be a little bit more. I mean, that's just not getting shared. You can go and
sure,
support that with your dollars, right? But I think,
exactly,
yeah, when it comes to the billionaires aren't going to miss a few 100,000 from the amount we wouldn't be getting from us sharing our password with our friends and family. But
exactly. Yeah,
they're going to
I
keep it.
don't
They're
want to go
keeping us
on
from doing it.
exactly. Yeah, I don't want to go on my leftist red pinko soapbox just yet, but yeah, it was really formative for me to have a black box growing up, and I probably wouldn't have seen so many of the movies as many times as I'd seen them otherwise. Darkman is another one that I remember
Oh
watching
my God.
over again, thanks to it. So that's kind of where I grew up. Ghostbusters was my favorite movie from the time I was like 3 or 4. I wanted to be a Ghostbuster growing up. I still want to be a Ghostbuster, basically. Dream job is
Everyone wants a proton pack. I mean, it's just there's nothing cooler than a proton pack.
I was more into like the Egon and Ray research and like discovery
Study.
stuff and in the study, yeah. So uh sort of a through line in my life is sort of doing extracurricular paranormal research growing up and I've always been sensitive to the supernatural. I do believe it exists because I've experienced it. So I keep that sort of in the back of everything too.
Yeah, I mean the world's a scary place, without the supernatural in it. But I do think the older I get, the more I'm kind of willing to believe that, I don't know it. Like one, I definitely don't know it all. And two, if I know that I don't know it all, then I know that there's no way for me to know for sure whether something is or is not true. And so it's more about acknowledging people's experience than it is trying to be objectively right or wrong most of the time.
Right. So you
Um,
don't want to debunk me right now? Is that
Absolutely not.
okay?
No, no. In fact, because I would have there's just nothing, there's no counterpoint for me to say, oh, this was your experience. It's like, well, like that's just that to me feels like you're just trying to piss on everything, versus, letting, I think we all can account for things we can't explain, whether they're things that feel relatively pedestrian or things that feel relatively supernatural. So I
Right.
think it's, all up to how we feel in that moment, and no one can tell us how we feel. We know that better than anybody.
Mhm.
So yeah, I genuinely believe that there are certainly things out there I definitely cannot explain, and there are probably some level of supernatural elements to them all. So never going to be here to rain on anyone's parade on that front. But
Thank you. It's very philosophical of you.
well, I guess, I turned 40 this year, so I feel like that has been a watershed moment in terms of reflecting on life and where I'm at in it.
That's
Um, but I think kind of getting back to the genesis of how we connected, the horror not hate comic. I want to hear from you a little about kind of what inspired you to not just take up the mantle, but also kind of what was the point where maybe we call it the breaking point, if you will, saying like this, there has to be something done, and what can I do about it?
Right, right. Well, my wife and I are both very politically minded. We're not at town meetings and, everything else, but we're appraisers of what's going on. We're evaluators of current events. We form opinions based on public policy and, how things are going in general. I think, despite whatever happens in the daily day-to-day minutia, you can still also sort of track like a general national trend, right? Like there's a direction that we're headed in. And
Yes.
I was never a fan of the Trump administration. I was very actively against um, him in 2016. I think to date, that was the worst presidency we'd ever had. The fact that it coincided with a global unprecedented pandemic and all this other stuff, um, I think he really messed that up.
Yeah.
And just, like everything, right? Like I'm just critical of pretty much everything. It was just very clear that he wanted to take us back to some imaginary rose-colored glasses version of the 1950s that never
Yeah.
actually existed.
Like
But
if Fallout, kind of like the things you get in like a Fallout
exactly.
cutscene.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely Fallout was on my mind because, for people that don't know, it's a very retro futuristic 1950s, 1960s type stuff. Um, but with this nuclear fallout and it felt like that's where we were going. Socially we were working backwards. We backed out of the Paris Climate Accords. We all of a sudden opened up national parkland for fossil fuel industries. It just like anything and
Pissed
everything.
off every ally we
Yeah,
had.
exactly. Defunded NATO. Like, did just like if you wrote a list down of everything that America stands for and everything that makes America great, he was systematically going one by one and saying, no, all the progress that we've been making, like, let's just scale it back. Let's bring it
Yeah.
back. And so when he wound up winning in November, I was despondent. Despondent might not even be like a strong enough word. I was literally lying down on the floor in sheer, utter, unadulterated depression. And
Feel that.
I still haven't woken myself up out of that completely. It's still a day-to-day struggle for me.
We're
Um,
reminded daily though of this. It's almost like, you know, I think when in 2016, it felt like there was a constant reminder of this is what you get. And now it's almost like we're getting that, but even more extreme in
Oh,
this round.
it's absolutely. It's more extreme. It's more pointed. It's a little bit more well organized and well thought out. And I don't want to credit him with that. I think the people that are around him have realized that they can push their own agendas and sort of use him and use his absolute corruption and absolute amoral compass and his absolute need for recognition and glorification to their advantage. And I think that's what's different and why things have been more sudden and more extreme
Yeah.
this go. And honestly, I'm really worried for like our future. Period. He's created a schism in this country that didn't exist before, or it. Let me take that back. It existed before, but it wasn't so emboldened, and it wasn't along such a hard line, right?
Think of it as like a cut and a scab, like we had started to scab over a lot of the ways
Yeah,
in which we as a country had been, and we still had so many things to work on. So I don't want to excuse the US in any regard, but to
right,
say to the extent that like I feel like there was a lot of healing going on particularly post the Obama presidency and throughout, like, okay, we can like break through barriers, we can start to make progress.
right.
Um, but it's like when with any like with a scab, if you rip it open, it's going to bleed again and it's going to get worse and then it's going to become permanent. Then you get a scar, right? So I've always found that an interesting metaphor for this is like, to keep
Oh
picking
yeah.
at that scab, it's never going to go away.
This country is going to wind up scarred,
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
from all of this, and we already have some. We're already building over some of them. We were a scarred country to begin with, right? The way that we were founded, how we came to power, what we did with that power. There's been a lot of force for good, and I still am a patriot. I do believe if we're to have borders, and again, I don't want to get into my weird super leftist thinking about
I'm
how
anti-borders
borders,
too. So I'm anti-borders. So
anti-borders, anti-nations, like let's just work together, that kind of thing. If I had it up to me, I'd make another Tower of Babel.
yeah,
So,
I'm with
uh,
you, comrade.
so, if we're to live in a world filled with nations, for us to be sort of the shining beacon of the quote unquote free world, to promote equality, to promote liberty, to promote all these ideals that we had as a nation. I grew up being educated that America was a melting pot, that we are strong because of the strength of the immigrants that come into our country. Going back far enough, pretty much anybody's family is a family of immigrants that came to this country, right?
Yeah.
And with me, not even all that far. And the idea that we took the hardest working people, the big dreamers, right? The ones that would risk everything to pack up and move to a foreign land with a different language, potentially different culture, and try to not just assimilate, but also to bring what it is that is best about their culture and their religion and their language and their cuisine and everything else to the table was what made America great. That you could look to our Olympic teams and it's people of all different colors and backgrounds and everything else. And the idea that we just took the best and the brightest, and it wasn't about where we were from necessarily. It was just we wanted to make America this big monolithic culture that's sort of cherry picked. I really like that. We borrow words from different places. Our food, is constantly changing because of it. And um, so to have everything taken away and to have it be in my backyard with Los Angeles and that being the initial ICE raids and immigrant raids and everything else um, really put a dark spot on my heart. And, like you said earlier, we're reminded of it every single day. Every single day, there's a reminder, hey, this is what's happening. This is what you're in for. You don't get a day off. And my wife started going to protests very early on. She was at City Hall and everything. I worked downtown in government, so I saw, a lot of the fallout from it, but I wasn't involved in the protests. Um, I have mixed feelings about the effectiveness of them. But what I was doing every day, which is also not effective, was doom scrolling the Associated
Right.
Press headlines and reading about, oh, the administration did this, and then there was this, and then there was that. And every single bit of news was terrible and made me angry and depressed every
It's
single
like
day.
paper cuts in your eyes every time you read something. It's
Exactly.
just, oh, how much worse could it get? Oh, there's another paper cut.
Yeah, yeah. You can't even ask that question, right? Like that should be stricken from our lexicon because the answer is always something could get worse and in ways that we're not necessarily expecting. So my wife got really sick of me talking about it and griping every single morning. My routine would be get to work, read the news over coffee and my breakfast, and then rage text my wife about it. And so she said, well, why don't you get off your ass and do something about it? And about the same time, there was an artist by the name of Marian Rodriguez, who I think goes by Deadite Corpse on Instagram.
Yeah.
And they had posted something that was politically minded, and when I reached out to them later, I couldn't see the story that I responded to, but basically my response was something like, "We have to take action into our own hands. This is untenable. Like I hate this," and that was kind of the seeds for horror not hate. Basically, I was like, if I'm not going to be protesting, I still want to make a difference. We were handing out red cards, but that didn't feel like enough, right?
Yeah.
And we're offering mutual aid. My wife was picking up people that were detained, during the protests and driving them home. She was doing food aid, like all this great stuff. But I was trying to want to like figure out how I fit in to the picture and what I could do to make a difference and maximize my effort making a difference. And so it occurred to me that I'm a writer. I have been a project manager for several companies over the years. Um, I have kind of a good mind for things. I always thought about doing publishing anyways. And I said, well, what if I leverage my connections, my history as a cold caller for a bunch of different jobs, and just see what I can do about getting everybody on board and creating a project to raise funds to help with vulnerable populations. And at the time, there was, I mean, it's scaled back a little bit. I think the emphasis with the government has been a lot more on foreign nationals and immigrants and the chaos caused by like grandfathers that work two car wash jobs, right? Because they're
Right.
terrorists. So it's taken a bit of a backseat, but if you remember early on, there was a big push against transgender people. They were looking to potentially, revoke same-sex marriages, all this other stuff. And so I said, well, what I can do is I can get a bunch of people together, manage this project. If I take on 10 times more work than everybody else, then maybe people won't feel bad contributing a story or some illustration or some coloring, and we could put out a book to raise money for human rights and civil rights. So that was sort of the genesis of it for me.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think something you've hit on is really important because there is a feeling that I think a lot of people feel what you felt in the sense that they feel helpless and like, what can I do? And you're right, like, not everyone is going to be someone who's going to show up at a protest. Not everyone's going to be somebody who's going to go out and, be able to assist with mutual aid. Um, and I think that there's a lot of people that do want to help in some way, shape, or form. And of course, like, I think one of the things that continues to be reminded, or at least we would be reminded about, is like the importance of community and kind of working within your local, scene as opposed to thinking that, well, I'm not going to change what's happening over in, like, let's say Texas, right? But what can I do within my local community right now that's going to drive an impact? And so I think what you've kind of described is just so much of what a lot of people feel right now, this almost compassion paralysis of like, I'm so I want to do so much, but I don't even know what I could be doing or how I could affect this. And if nothing else, like, folks can listen to what you've kind of thought about, kind of your journey through this and thinking, maybe there is a way I contribute that doesn't feel like traditional. It doesn't feel like the most kind of vocal, but is still helping me to deliver a good, deliver an impact.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think when you think about the folks, getting folks to want to contribute, right? It can feel like a bit of a strange ask. It's like, hey, I'm doing this thing for charity. In essence, that means we're really not either going to pay you or going to pay you very little. So it's kind of out of the goodness of your heart. What's been the response you've gotten from a lot of creatives that you've reached out to for the project?
Well, that's a really good question. I'd like to skip back a little tiny bit.
Sure, sure.
That you were talking about, your local communities and everything. We have this amazing thing called the internet. And I remember, like in the mid 90s, we would see commercials for it. It's like a clockmaker in Tokyo and a clock buyer in England, and soon enough, everybody's going to be connected. But it's fucking true.
Yeah.
The community is global now, and it's not along national lines, right? It's not along color lines. It's about what it is that you feel in your heart. And the comic community and the horror community and the metal community, and I'm gonna throw all three in there. Um, some of the tightest knit communities I've ever been a part of. Some of the best communities with the kindest people in general,
Yep.
I would say. People that are accepting of people with Neurodivergence is a big one because I am neurodivergent. People that are accepting of different body shapes and body types and disabilities and everything else. And it's just like, oh, you love the same things that I love? Well, then you're part of the club. And so I wouldn't have done this project, I don't think, if I didn't know that the communities that I'm involved in and the communities that are dear to me weren't so tightly knit. And what's really been interesting about the reaction that I got just asking people is that it's become very much a global effort. Originally, I was just contacting US based people because these are US based charities that we're going to be giving to. And it's a in my mind at the time, because I had such tunnel vision, it was like, this is a domestic problem. But really, anything that's a problem for the US, uh, braggadocious as it may be, becomes a problem for the world. And then on top of that, every other country is going through some version of this. Either
Yeah.
there's somebody in power right now that shouldn't be, or and is doing things that they shouldn't, or there are upstarts or movements growing in other nations. Money is being thrown to different countries and to different viewpoints that more mirror the administration here abroad, right? And so it really didn't take much for anybody to be on board with this. And my response has been, and this is almost all cold calling through Instagram DMs and Blue Sky. And can you hit up, like, I know you know so and so, can you hit up them and see if they're interested? And the response for people that check their DMs and respond, which is not many, has been universally positive. And I was really terrified of, I mean, supposedly, uh, we're a country that elected Trump legitimately. And I'm going to say supposedly, which would imply that while it might not have been a popular vote over 50%, roughly half of the nation is in support of his views, right? And so I was like, well, does that mean one out of every two people I contact
Right.
is going to be giving me a hard time or telling me to fuck off or doxing me or, what have you? And no, no, I've contacted at this point, I don't know, 400 people in support
Wow.
of the project, maybe more, between artists and writers and colorists and letterers and media people and podcasters and everything else. And I've not gotten one person to say like, "Oh, you're an asshole," or like, "No, like you're raising money for the wrong things," or anything like that. The worst that I've gotten is either a non-answer, and again, that could just be because people don't check their DMs or they don't know me because, my follower count's okay, but it's not like I have 20,000 people following me and I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm doing this. I'm a nobody, essentially. Or maybe I might be like one baby step above a nobody. But I do have a catalog of work that I can point to. I haven't burned any bridges as far as I know. I try and give everybody respect. And so I think people could see that and they could see in my messages, short or long as they may have been, uh, uh, an amount of passion. And like I said, if I'm taking on 10 times the amount of work and you believe in the same cause, how tough is it for a writer to spend 3 weeks pumping out a 4 to 10 page story? Or how tough is it really to add 6 pages of illustration for a good cause? Especially when so many of us creative types are living hand to mouth. We might
Right.
not have money to give to a cause, but we have the time that we can give to a cause. And if it's doing something that you love and do already, and you can get an extra credit out of it, by being in a book, for me, it becomes a no-brainer. And apparently, for a lot of other people, it became a no-brainer because our book is massive and has amazing talent connected to it. And I can only imagine if this does well, um, the level of talent is only going to get bigger and better too. You
I
know,
mean, you've taken something that I mean, it's kind of like peanut butter chocolate to me. It's like you've taken this kind of thing, this interest that we all gravitate towards, which is horror comics, and then you've taken this cause, you've given it purpose, right? And I think it's so easy for us to just blindly spend money today and just think, oh, I'm going to get this movie or I'm going to get this book in return. But we often are doing that, like, not so much in the physical media space or maybe the indie space, but, other cases, we're giving our money to places that really don't need it, and they're
Yes.
getting something out of it. We're getting something from it, right? That's commerce. But at the same time, we now are given more opportunities to really put our money where our beliefs are. And I think, what you've found is just that harmony between people that enjoy the same things, but also want to do something good. And it's not, I think we it can be so easy to like have a pissing competition over who's doing what. But really it's like, if we can feel good about saying that I'm able to enjoy my hobbies at the same time support something that matters to me. And something you said before really resonated about kind of the metal and the horror and the comic communities really being so open to this and being so welcoming. And I think what's so interesting, and I've talked about this before with others, is just the perception on the outside of those communities is very different than what it is to be inside of them. And I think
Yes.
the best example of this is really if you think about like how we're viewed based off of the content. So a metal show is a great example. Been to so many punk and metal shows in my day
Mhm.
where you go into a mosh pit, you get knocked around a little bit, but the second that somebody falls down,
Pick right
everything
back.
stops, and you're picked right up by five people who are 10 times the size of you. And
Hmm.
even if someone's trying to continue, they're making a space for you to be able to at least get out. And it's the same with horror. We watch these kind of violent, visceral movies, but at the same time, you come and talk to us. We're just the sweetest people. And so I think there is this, this deep good that exists within these communities. There's always toxicity. That's just the nature of the beast. It's
Yeah.
humanity. But there's also these really good spots, and I think activating people in the community, and not only is just the most authentic way of getting your message across, but it's also the best way to find people that are like-minded, that you can have this share this impact with. And when you think about the kind of the volume of the book now, I mean, how big are you anticipating this thing being? Now you've gotten so much interest.
It's like 7,000 pages. At this
It's
point,
home.
yeah, no, it's looking like it's about 250 pages.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it could be a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, depending, but it's definitely over 200. We have 25 stories that are slated to be in the book, each between 4 and 11 pages. I was telling people make it 4 to 10, but we had Bram Stoker, Shirley Jackson award-winning writer, working on his second comic story ever, in Tim Waggoner, and he was like, "Well, is it okay if I do 11 pages?" I was like, "For you, 11 pages is cool."
I guess.
Especially, yeah, I guess so. Great writer that you are. Yeah, he actually had a very interesting approach to his story where each page is just a 4 panel page. And I think that's really like a really cool way of going with it because I like messing with my panel structure too and using that as sort of a tool. So Tim's is 11 pages, all the rest of them are between 4 and 10 pages. And then the roster for the art book portion, because it is a half charity horror anthology and half art book. The art book roster keeps growing, and that has been. And I imagine the same thing would be if I just kept an open call for the stories. It would be a snowball rolling downhill. But the art book portion is definitely a snowball rolling downhill. We had a couple early adopters that were amazing, great names. Skinner, who is inside the metal world, inside the comic world, inside the outsider art world, the lowbrow art world, was an early adopter and agreed to do a cover for us, as well as contribute to the art book portion. Horror artist Jonathan Lamantia also volunteered to do a cover and then also designed the logo out of the kindness of his heart. So we had a couple names to sort of rest on, and I'm an opportunist. So I'm going to approach someone and say, hey, guess who else we have on here? Oh, we follow the same people. You have the same 30 artists in your following that are on this book. Like, why not mention them, right? And so it feels like the bigger gets we have, like the bigger fish we catch, the bigger the bait for the next fish.
Yeah.
And so it's just been this great thing as we're finishing up the stories and getting print ready. I've been able to go to different artists and say, hey, we have this. A matter of fact, we just got an artist, Tyler Lamph, Lamph, who I've been following for years on Instagram, has a huge following. And I don't know if I had approached him in February when I started, I don't know that we would have had him, but we
Hmm.
have making an original piece for the art book. And so this art book portion, I've gotten a lot more excited about it. Oh, and I want to be like excited about the comics, and I am excited about the comics, but also because what's more organic right now and still growing is the art book. That's where my enthusiasm is. And so it's going to be killer. It's amazing. So I don't know exactly how many pages. It depends on how many people come through. And also, we are working with different companies on the smaller side that are contributing stuff to make our backer rewards more appealing in exchange for some ad space in the back of the book. To show the hey, we contributed and check us out, check our stuff out. And so there's an uncertain amount of ads right now. I'm popping out at like 10 because I don't want to manage that many different backer rewards. And then it's uncertain how many gallery pieces we're going to have in the art book.
Well, I mean, I'm not surprised to hear people have come around to this because it's again, as you said, I don't want to, it's not low effort, but more so if I can use something that I'm doing already and apply it to a good cause, like that's just it's a very easy and seamless way to contribute. But also, um, I know that we have a mutual friend in Jonathan Chance who's going to be contributing a story. And
Mhm.
so I think that there is such a great community of writers and artists, as you mentioned, who are coming around for this. But the more people that tell their people, as you said, the more people know about it. And excited to kind of see who you can end up pulling on the backer reward side. But I truly believe a lot of the things that people will come to and want to support with this is the core mission of the book, which is to help fund, like, help fund anti-fascist agenda, help fund an anti-fascist agenda by helping the most vulnerable communities that need money right now and working with charities to help get them that. And I think that's something that anyone that's in any sort of position, I certainly think about it at Macabre Daily is what can we be doing in this regard. We've got some plans on a meals service we're going to work on, but like there's yeah, I mean it's just like I think that you're not alone. I think if anything else is to say like you're definitely not alone in thinking that there's more that we collectively as creatives or people that are working alongside of creatives can be doing. And I think if nothing else, you're giving everyone else the kind of the go ahead to say, yeah, you can do this. Like you can just reach out to people and put something together and have an impact no matter how. Now, the stories themselves, especially for the comic book, are these going to be, is there any sort of consistent through line or theme that's going to be through these, or is everyone just kind of submitting their own, whether it's topical or not, they're just kind of they got a story they want to tell?
Right. So, with the stories themselves, I decided that there should be a theme, even though I'm just like happy to just read any and all horror, right?
Right.
I thought it would make more sense and help give people a little bit of direction to have a theme. And so, the theme of the stories themselves is horror revolving around hate, fascism, transphobia, homophobia, xenophobia, racism, or toxic patriotism. And so, a lot
That
of
last one's going to be a lot of fun.
yeah, well, honestly, there hasn't been enough of that for my blood, and I'm hoping
Really?
some of the artists focus on it. Yeah, if I didn't already have a story in it, I should have waited to write mine until I saw what people were pitching in and try and like, do one of the lesser covered subjects. But the toxic patriotism is one that is a little bit pervasive in a lot of the different stories, but it's not necessarily the theme, right?
Gotcha.
I would say the closest to it is Ben Kahn, who's an accomplished comic writer and I believe part of the queer community too. Um, Forgive me, Ben, if I'm misidentifying you. But Ben put out a story called Gun Made Flesh, which is really absurd. And it's about, I don't want to give away too much, but it's basically about a national figurehead created and mobilized by the blood, sweat, and tears of the American public. And
Wow.
it's body horror and it's weird. And we had this really cool artist that was referred to me by a friend named Alan Quirk, who does this really cartoony, cutesy, but also sexy style. And I had him do the art. One of the most fun things about the project was trying to pair the artists that have signed up and the writers that have signed up and deciding based on the script who would fit what the best. And you're working with a limited pool, right? And so
Right.
things not line up one to one. And certain artists maybe said, oh, make sure that I'm on a smaller story because I can only give so much time or my schedule's that booked or whatever. And so putting together that jigsaw puzzle has been really fun and it's created some unexpected or unproven until it came to fruition combinations that turned out incredible. And I would say that this is one of them and one of the toxic patriotism stories. So Gun Made Flesh is awesome. It's colored by a cool artist named Austin Bacall, and that's probably the best example of it. Uh, a lot of people went for sort of toxic patriotism seeping in through some sort of Fox News analog or some
Mm,
analog, and a lot of that, there's a lot of the idea that what is inside your heart is transformative to who you are on the outside. That's sort of a common through line in a lot of the stories. And really, I mean, that's pretty foundational to how we are as people, right? We
yeah.
we eat. And so if all you're consuming is hate, then hate will eventually take its toll on you, right? Uh,
Right.
the same way that drinking a ton of booze causes you to look all fucked up and stuff over the years.
I mean, it's the
So
same. Like the heart is the liver of our emotions, right? So it's kind of like the
yeah,
uh, if
okay,
you
I
just
have
ruin it with a bunch of, I
yeah,
just made it up. So it's that ADHD just magic of just whatever's came out. It's there. But
yeah,
there's
you're
a book. There's a book that I was thinking of when you were talking about kind of the toxic patriotism, but also through the lens of like media. It's
right.
Clay McLeod Chapman's "Open Your Eyes," or "Wake Up and Open Your Eyes,"
Okay.
and it's a harrowing book about just like what would happen. Like basically, the premise is what happens if Fox News is really programming people into like becoming monsters, essentially, and what does that look like? And I think it's really easy. I think as far as themes are concerned, that's something that's so present in our daily lives is the way in which media has become a tool, both of the worst and the best, and a lot of times the worst intentions, but also, how the realization perhaps that maybe some of these things haven't been always as good as we thought they have, or haven't been as honest as they have, at least as we thought they have. So I think there's so much, I mean, it's such a rich topic to be able to pull from, I guess, as far as where you could take it. So I think what's most interesting to me is that every story is going to have, there's going to be some overlaps in terms of maybe topics that are touched on, but everyone's interpretation of what they're going through is going to be unique. And I think that that's something that, right now we you know, all of us are experiencing what's happening now differently,
Yes.
depending on our relationship to what's happening and who it's happening to. Um, but I think this is again like I can't compliment this work enough. It's just so far as what it's doing, what it started for, and to put emphasis on the people behind it who are helping you bring it together, but also for yourself for putting it on, taking this on yourself to do something that is not going to net you, right? This is not like
No,
a
no,
financial invest, this is
no, I am taking negative money for this. Yeah, so we're not technically allowed to say it on the Kickstarter page because that is a violation of terms and services. But what it comes down to is we're going to take all the money outside of printing, Kickstarter fees, fulfillment. I'll probably need to bring somebody in to help me put together all the packages and stuff. So, like, that's going to have to come out of my pocket. But we are making split donations of equal size to Chirla for immigrant rights and Lambda Legal for the LGBTQIA plus rights. And I'm making nothing. I'm making $0 from it. Um, I've already sunk a fair bit of money into things, like just stupid things for graphics, like a Canva membership or something. Like, just here and there. I'm gonna have to take out an ad at some point. That's gonna come out of my pocket. All this time and energy is capital that I'm spending. Yeah, I almost said losing. I'm not losing it. I'm gaining something in it. But yeah, no, I'm not doing it out of any sort of selfish means. There are byproducts that are positive. I'm not 1,000% altruistic. I'm not Jesus on a crucifix or anything. It puts me in touch with so many different artists and writers that I've admired for years. Now, we have rapport. I get an editing credit for editing 25 different stories. I have the experience of putting together a book, I'm no saint by any stretch, but I'm not making any money out of this, and neither is anybody else. This is a labor of love for all of us. This is a labor of standing up for what we believe in. This is a labor of feeling like people should just be left the fuck alone. Like
Right.
if anything, it's just like let everybody be who they're gonna be, and as long as they're not actively oppressing you in any stretch of the imagination, just let them live their lives. And that's kind of what I come down to is, just we all have our demons, we all have our battles, we all have our tragedies in our life. Like, let's just help each other get through it as best as we can. And it shouldn't have to be dependent, it should be unconditional, right? Unless you do something to betray that yourself. And that should be on an individual level, not a group of people level.
I feel like what you're saying, it goes to this idea that we spend so much time concerning ourselves with the business of others,
Hmm.
and so much of our I think I think so much of our created manufactured mental anguish comes from being involved in things that are none of our business. So, for example, if when someone wants to be use they them pronouns, and identifies as non-binary, it should not matter to anybody else that that's the case for this person. And the most insignificant, or sorry, the most significant like change anyone has to make is just changing the word that they use to refer to that person.
Right. Which
Like,
isn't like nothing, but it's also like, how big is it
yeah,
really?
like it's not like it's not hard. It's something
Yeah.
that anyone could do, and
Yeah.
people do regularly. And so I think so much of this is just this reminder that there is like we are we are upset. There's so many things to be upset about, but some of the things we're upset about are none of our business. Like trans rights is a huge one about like what does it matter to anybody else how someone wants to live their life? And we are a better place when everyone can have a great time. So why not make your environment as inviting and welcoming and as inclusive as possible? Um, like regardless of whether you believe, agree, it doesn't matter. Like, our opinions are just that, like my favorite saying, opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one and they're all full of shit, so um I think what you're doing, JM, and the creatives you've gotten to work with, or gotten to collaborate with, is such a great thing, and I hope to see more of it. I hope you this does so well that you get a second volume, and this can just be a mechanism to continue to do good at the same time enjoying horror. And my last question for you is, what aside from we have the Kickstarter coming up in mid-December. You can you can get pre-notified now if you'd like. Is
Yeah,
there
it is.
anything else folks can do
Sure.
to kind of help spread the word,
Right.
help you out, help the creatives out that are contributing to this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the honest answer is anything and everything helps. Um, you know, the most important thing right now is we want to make sure that this campaign's a success. Funding the printing for a 200 something page book and all the shipping and stuff is not insubstantial, right? And
Yeah.
so we're going to have a kind of high goal just to get it printed and shipped. And, that's without anything else that is a consideration. So the number one thing I want people to do is to follow us in pre-launch because that affects the algorithm. It affects what people see ahead of the launch, and that's how we get our training wheels on us. So if people could follow us, the link is bit.ly/, horror not hate, and I think it's case sensitive, so it's capital H for horror, capital N for not, capital H for hate. So
And I'll
bit.ly.
put a link to it in the show notes so
Thank you.
folks can.
Thanks. Yeah, you don't want me to say it like five more times.
I mean, listen, if you
No,
want,
that's
but
fine.
it's like phone numbers. Like when someone recites a
Right.
phone number, it's like, oh, I'm gonna have to go back on
Yes.
that one.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for including it. Yeah, so people should follow that. Even if you don't think that you're going to back it financially, just adding your number to it helps us out. Um, Sharing any of the postings that we do, several of the writers and artists have taken it on themselves to post about it already. A small fraction of the number of people involved actually, and it's made a huge difference. So if you could tell your horror loving cousin, if you could, your socially conscious friend, right? Like anybody that you think would be interested in it. It's not just a comic book. So even if you're not into comic books, like if you're a horror lover, you're gonna like the stories regardless. But also, if you're not a comic person, you're gonna have a whole art book full of cool art from comic artists, from metal artists, from horror artists, from lowbrow artists. I just pulled from the people that I love that I think would want to contribute. So I even pulled a ton of artists from this art challenge that I follow every year called Season of the Bad Guys Club, which is something artist Craig Gleason puts together, where he has 31 prompts through October of different characters that he's created over the years. And it's just like up to people to interpret that character in their style, or even
Huh.
just what the name of the character means to them. So it could have no uh, affiliation whatsoever with Craig's original characters. And so some of those artists have been amazing. And so I've recruited a few of those. I could rattle off names, but it probably won't make much sense. So um, yeah, even if you're not a horror fan, if you like looking at cool stuff, please support it. If you like human rights, please support it. If you are in the queer community or an ally, please support it. If you are a child of an immigrant, grandchild of an immigrant, please support it. If you have had your community affected by raids, please support it. And that could be anything from adding your number to the pre-launch to backing it when it comes out to retweeting a tweet, or I'm not on Twitter, so
Yeah.
blue skying a blue sky, or,
Yeah.
reposting an image.
Reskying. I don't know if I don't
Yeah,
know what term they're making it yet.
I haven't figured that one out just yet. Just anything like that, following the artists and writers so that they don't think that their contribution has been totally in vain. Like let's add to their sort of ego a little bit and get some new followers for them, right? Just anything. If you don't want to back the book and you want to help me with ad revenue, hit me up. Like if you know somebody that has a connection, hit me up. If you're a comic shop or know a comic shop, let me know because we're going to wind up having retailer incentives and retailer packages on the Kickstarter. So there's any number of ways to get involved, and even if you can't think of a way to get involved, I can find a way for you to get involved. So just DM me on Instagram. And there's space for everybody because right now I'm doing the work of like 20 people. In addition to writing my own books, in addition to my day job, in addition to being a dad and all that other fun stuff. So any just wishing me good luck. Just just do that. Just write me,
Kind words,
hey, good
they
luck,
go a long
dude.
way.
Yeah, it's true. Like anything and everything. So, number one, follow the pre-launch, and number two, literally anything else.
Well, we'll make sure to put together kind of a list of ways folks can support it and make it really easy for them to be able to share it, to follow the artists that are getting involved, and just go save the pre-launch page so they can be notified. And JM, I just want to say thank you again for taking some time to talk about this. Also, the chance to get to speak to you has been outstanding. Just you're clearly someone who not only loves their horror but also wants to make the world a better place. And I think that those are two things that I'll always get behind. So always happy to help out however we can with this. We'll continue to support the horror not hate work you're doing once it gets closer to launch. And yeah, making sure folks can get involved and get and enjoy all the the fruits of all the labors that everyone's putting into this. Because again, it's horror for a good cause. We don't often get to enjoy these things and know that we're doing something good at the same time. So
Exactly.
if nothing else, use this as your way to say I've done the good thing today by supporting something that's going to help people.
It's a very small ask for you to just like support the artists and the writers in the book and just know like it's a lot easier to make a donation to a charity when you're getting something back.
Sure.
So it's a very easy way of you getting something back for your money. Like don't feel that it's wasted and then you can even write it off for tax purposes. It is
It's a
uh
charitable nation.
is a charitable donation. Although I actually don't take tax advice from me. I'm not a
Yeah.
CPA.
Yeah,
You
this
might not
this is
literally
not a
be able
tax
to do that.
podcast. So
Yeah, you might not literally be able to do that because we're not a nonprofit. But we are collecting for nonprofits. And so, yeah, just, put your money where your mouth is or put your money where your heart is and
exactly.
support it.
Well, thank you, JM. And again, from everyone at Macabre Daily, you've got our support. We'll make sure make everyone know how they can continue supporting you in the work. And until next time, looking forward to chatting with you again about horror comics and most importantly, fighting back against what is objectively a lot of bullshit right now. So, thanks for the time,
Absolutely.
JM.
Anytime. Thank you.